The project was developed under the CIA, and the project name was M.K. Naomi, as in the woman's name, Naomi. That is the project that developed AIDS. This is the bill that funded the project. This is the report that made it necessary.
They're tuning in here. Did you hear that?
They're always tuning in.
Who's the author of that bill? Who's the author?
The author of this book was Danella H. Meadows, Dennis L. Meadows, Jorgen Randers, and Nina tells me that's a Danish name, William W. Behrens III. That's 4 authors.
If we can't find it in bookstores or anywhere, then would you be willing to charge for price of being Xerox?
I don't see why not. We just have to find somebody with the time to do it and figure out how much it's going to cost.
Check your used bookstores. I've seen it.
Yeah, you may find it's really hard to find, though. I will tell you this, that the CIA during the Reagan administration, Reagan wrote some executive orders, and the CIA sent agents out to bookstores and libraries and removed every copy of this they could find, along with a whole lot of other books that were reclassified. And a lot of previously released classified information was reclassified back to secret and top secret and actually taken off of library shelves.
Is it true, or are you aware of it, or am I in error, that Jack Kennedy met with extraterrestrials in Florida, and that he also made the statement, when I'm elected president, he said, I'm going to break the CIA up in 1,000 pieces, and that has anything to do with the way he's executed in the car as he run down the avenue in Texas?
Well, he did make that statement about the CIA. I do not know if he met any aliens in Florida, but I do know that according to the documents that I saw,
Yes, sir.
he was ordered, executed because he had told them to stop importing and selling drugs to the American people, and he had told them to implement a plan to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's what it said in the documents. It also stated that the murder was plainly visible on the film withheld from the public. It took me 16 years to find that film, but I found it, and I've showed it to America, and people now know who killed the president.
Can we get copies of those documents you were just telling us about?
These are the only copies I have right now.
We could write you get a copy of those
Yeah, I
documents?
wanted to get here and tell you about this information before somebody found out that I knew it.
On those 2 pieces
Now
of
that
paper?
you know it too, I'm safe.
Well,
But until you knew it, I wasn't safe. Yes.
those 2 pieces of paper you're talking, is that the question he's referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Strecker had those Xeroxes on his table.
He has these?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think a lot of people even knew they were back there. Nobody ever
Well,
got it.
I have
I wasn't
copies of
aware
those.
that he had them.
He did. The guy on the table was named Leo, and I've met him
Does he
in
know
LA.
about M.K. Naomi?
I don't know. He knew. He mentioned in his speech to $10 million, and that's where he got the figure from those papers.
Does he know about the Club of Rome study?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll write him anyway. Yes,
Have you run into something called the report from Iron Mountain?
that's the next thing I was going to talk about.
Bill, how did Kennedy then have this relationship that he's going to do something about extraterrestrials unless he had met or had some contact?
Well, I never met one or had any contact, and I was exposed for 3 years to the whole damn secret.
But didn't he say he was going to do something about that?
Yes, he
Isn't that
did.
what you said he
Yes.
said?
He said that he...
How did that happen? You didn't find out yet?
No,
Okay.
no.
When you said that you knew who killed John F. Kennedy, would you tell me who that? I didn't.
William Greer, the man driving his car.
Front seat, right?
Chauffeur.
And that's why Jackie's getting out the back.
That's why
Get
she
Jack
tried,
Kennedy's
that's why
brain.
she tried to leave the
Getting
car.
the fuck out of the car.
Exactly.
And then she married Jack Monette, the bravest guy in the world, you know? She ain't so dumb.
And then they killed Robert for the same reason.
Okay.
Let's sort of keep this organized so that we can make sense out of it.
One
Because it's
speaker.
easy to get sidetracked and then nothing makes any sense. Yes, Maria?
Bill, I don't know, I haven't seen the film yet. I want to see it. I spoke to Mr. Grice, Bill Grice,
Uh-huh.
about it, and he was so 100% positive that the shelter didn't, you know, something to do with.
I can't account for Colonel
Yeah, I've heard
Grice's,
that too.
belief about how Kennedy was killed. I can tell you that I saw top secret documents that told me what agencies were involved, who shot the president, how it was done, what kind of weapon it was, where I could see it, and it took me 16 years to get a copy so I could see it, and we make it available for the public. You can talk to Stan about it. And we've gotten another copy that's in color now. That's as good as the other one that we had, that was better. It's in color, you can see it a lot better. The copy we had was black and white and sort of washed out, but the one we have in color, and the Japanese have analyzed it and said, Mr. Cooper is absolutely right, showed it in prime time in Japan, they have circled the weapon so you can see it.
Wow.
The people at Nippon Television in Japan sent me that film, along with their report of their analysis. It will be in my book, yes.
I just thought it was strange, because Bo used to literally sell that tape.
Yes, he
He
did.
would say to you that it's not happening yet.
Totally
He used to sell the tape, he had the American Information Network selling that tape out of Orange County,
Well,
California.
now,
He did a lecture.
let's not be too hard on Colonel
No,
Grice.
I'm not hard on him, I just think,
We don't
But
understand.
it may be interpreted that way because Colonel Grice is trying to accomplish something with the Center for Action, and that means he can no longer be who he was. And I think he was trying to tell you that in one of his talks. He was trying to tell you, I've had to make some compromises in order to accomplish what we have to accomplish. I can no longer run up the hill with my sword drawn, chopping off heads. Did you hear him say that?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. In other words, Bo is admitting that, hey, I started out running up the hill, leading the charge, chopping off the heads, but I've learned that I get more attacks coming back at me when I do that, therefore I have to be political in what I'm doing. Basically, that's what he's telling you, yes.
Bill, I found out from an intelligence source of mine that a writer wrote a book called The Coral Incident.
Yes?
He had this book in his hand, and the government pulled this book. After 3 weeks on the shelves, all these books disappeared. He said that ditto copies of the Roswell incident.
It's still around, you can get it. Yeah, you can, but it's hard. They can never find every copy, and somehow, somewhere, they always, if they're important, they resurface again somehow. Okay, let's talk about the Iron Mountain Report. Nobody knows who wrote it because it doesn't have anybody's name attached to it. Nobody knows where it came from. Nobody knows how it got into the public. But it is a report that outlines the plan of a secret world power to bring about a one world order. And they try to justify what they intend to do by saying that the new world order will do away with all wars and human suffering and will ensure everlasting peace. But to do it, we got to kill everybody, we got to destroy all patriotism, we have to enslave the human race. I mean, these guys are really weird. Part of the plan, and this is important that you know this, and for those of you who believe heart and soul in aliens, and maybe in benevolent aliens are going to come and save you, and all that kind of stuff, I'm not attacking your beliefs. What I'm trying to do is give you more information with which to survive with. That's important. They're going to use all of this to take away our freedoms. In the Iron Mountain Report, it says, under Iron Mountain, peace to be achieved by total global disarmament, the following grisly events would be scheduled. 1, destruction of life, property, and natural resources to stabilize population and economic society. War does that now. Okay? They want to create something artificial other than war to bring it about. Decisions via computers as to the nature and extent of the loss of life and other resources. 3, inflicted outbreaks of hostility to keep subdued the denizens of the futuristic world. Let me see, where's it at here? Where am I? lost my place.
Your last word was world.
Well, I've lost my place here, but anywhere in this report, what it says is to bring this about, we have to create an enemy, an alien enemy from outer space. It says it right in the Iron Mountain report. How many of you have read it? Anybody? Remember that?
They discussed it in about 2 sentences and then got on with other things. They
That's
also
right. It's on this page, but I
massive
can't
pollution
find it. It's
journal
driving me crazy. Anyway, I'm not gonna keep trying.
That's a paraphrasing, if I'm not mistaken, that page you have. It's not verbatim quote, is it?
No, this is not a verbatim quote. Okay, there's nothing there. I'm gonna miss there. Here we go. This is from a speech that John Dewey made. John Dewey, professor of philosophy in Columbia University, who was a speaker at this symposium. And he says, this is what he says, someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose. You getting the message? Okay. There
I
are...
think what they actually decided on was the internal enemy, the 10% of druggies.
Pardon?
They dismissed the external threat from space in a matter of a couple of sentences, it looked like. They dismissed the external threat posed by accelerating the rate of world pollution as too politically dangerous. They recommended that they castigate and separate 10% of the population under some, quote, euphemistic form of slavery,
Which
such
is
as
drugs.
camps being prepared for druggies now.
But you have to understand the way they do things. And I think if you were listening to Eustace Mullins, you may have heard that they never just do one thing.
Right.
They create several things and they manipulate the outcome. What they did is all three. They are using the alien phenomena. They are overpolluting the earth. And they did create the drug scenario. It is the CIA that's bringing drugs into this country and selling them to our children. And if you don't believe that, then you've never learned your simple mathematics in kindergarten. Because there's no other way in this world you can account for the large amounts of drugs in every single city in this country. And how many cities are there in this country? And how many tons of drugs does it take each city to supply the drug addicts with? And how can you bring that much drugs into this country through little bitty planes flying across the Caribbean? And even if they could find enough planes to bring that much drugs across the Caribbean, do you really believe the North American Air Defense Command is totally incompetent?
They're on drugs.
That's very funny.
And they're aliens, so.
Also, you can't possibly believe there's that many little cigar boats running across the Caribbean carrying those drugs either. You think the Coast Guard is incompetent? Recently I took a trip to Texas, and all along the border there's balloons. I mean, there's spaces you can see the next balloon from the one you're standing at. Nobody's going to get through that unless they want them to get through it. And the key is they do want theirs to get through it. Yes, ma'am.
They bring them in on military aircraft,
That is correct.
and the pilots or the air crews are not allowed to touch the cargo. And from Laos, when I've been over in Southeast Asia the last time, they were bringing crates called labeled security equipment out of Laos into Bangkok. And great big crates, and they were storing them in the embassy warehouse on Sikkim, Soy 33. And I know a lot of people who've seen them, and sometimes some of it leaked out.
This woman used to work for
And
the...
if anybody gets caught, they'll just blame the military pilots.
You wanna tell us who you used to work for?
No, I'd rather not.
Pardon?
We know anyway. I used to work for the government too, let's relax. Go, Bo, you know, relax.
And I do know people with Punsan names, like Ted Shackley, Tom Klein, Richard Armitage.
Those sweet guys.
And when Richard Armitage was going over for his so-called negotiations about the POWs and MIAs, what he was really doing is negotiating for his drug deals, which are still going on. And according to officials I know in the Thai government, the amount of drugs being grown in Vietnam and Laos has increased at a considerable growth. And I don't know if you know it or not, but now Laos has declared opium legal again. It had been legal all through the war until 1971, and that's when Burma broke off diplomatic relations with Laos. And now they've made opium legal again. And the same heroin factories, I can think of 6 or 7 that were existent when I was there, are still in existence now. And that's the reason the POWs haven't come back from there, is because too many of them knew about.
I only knew about, they used as slave labor to grow the poppies.
That's probably where some of the MIAs
I've seen
are.
pictures of them working in the poppy fields, yes.
I think more important about the POWs is the fact that if a live POW comes out of Southeast Asia now, everybody in America is going to want to know whose job it was to get those POWs back. And the man's name is Richard Armitage, CIA, was he station chief?
No, he wasn't that at all.
What was
But
he?
I don't
What was
know, he
Armitage
might be a
doing?
contract agent like they contract
Contract
mafia.
agent. This guy works for the
I
mob.
don't
He's
know
dirty.
that he ever was a CIA agent. He may not
Negotiating
be.
for our bases there.
Richard Armitage is the one who set up the Far East Trading Company
That's right, I think
in the Far East, and the Far East Trading Company was used as the shipping point for the drugs out of Southeast Asia and into the United States.
He's a great patriotic anti-drug warrior.
That's right, yeah.
to give you a little background, I don't know if he really was CIA, because not all of them are, but it really doesn't matter. They're all part of the secret government. He was a Navy, he retired as a Navy commander, and he had 4 houses in Bangkok, or in Vietnam before, but, you know, everybody does what they can do best. But one of the networks told me he had in Bangkok is one where the girls in there are slaves. They're not there of their own free will. And I figured, I got down to the
To us,
neighborhood,
that's
but I
terrible,
don't know
but when
which
you
one
listen to
was
some
his.
of this, you have to understand, in some foreign countries, that's acceptable. In some foreign countries, you can sell your daughter into slavery, and it's totally socially acceptable.
Or trade for a motorcycle.
Yeah, but to us, it's not, but,
And under, one of the people I reported to before when I worked in Southeast Asia told me that when Reagan was running for president, Armitage's father-in-law, who's president of a large insurance company, gave George Bush a $200,000 campaign donation, and that's how he got to be Deputy Secretary of Defense for Asian Affairs. And then when Bush got elected president, he named him, he appointed him to Secretary of the Navy. That didn't work because of all the investigations he was under. Then Bush appointed him to Secretary of the Army. That didn't work either because of all the investigations. Then Bush appointed him Undersecretary of State for Asian Affairs, and that didn't work now, so he's a consultant.
In a position where they can investigate him, but yet still under the umbrella of national security.
And one thing else, you probably know many of you about Bo Bright's going to see Punsan naming 5 Americans, including Armitage, as running drugs. When I was over in Thailand at the time, and I saw the article in the Nation newspaper without the names on a Tuesday, that following Friday, Armitage came over with Weinberger and received an award for General Shavlat Yungchayu, who's the chairman, or their equivalent of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and whose wife is known to run huge amounts of drugs. In fact, DEA got one of her caravans, and the 2 DEA agents were transferred out of the country. And that all happened when I was over there. Well, following that, I got an article from a couple of Air Force friends of mine, which came over on an Air Force plane, and giving the names. So, I went to the AP wire service because that's where the article came through, and with a journalist friend of mine, and the Peter Eng at the Associated Press got angry with my friend, the journalist, for accusing him of not giving out the full information to protect these American government officials. And he pulled out the wire and showed my friend, and the wire didn't have the names on it. So that meant somebody interfered with Associated Press wire service and took those names out of the wire. And to me, that's serious and makes me wonder how many other UPI Associated Press wires have information eliminated to them.
Another point on Armitage, since the heat's been turned up, he's also, all of the information on him, is the general background information in the Library of Congress no longer exists. I understand you cannot get anything on him to the Library of Congress anymore.
I have a little information. I don't have the documents with me because while I was gone to
You got lots of information.
No, the documents, someone came in my storeroom, which was about 20 by 20. I had two friends that had the keys. They didn't even know where the storeroom was. I came back, and I had a storeroom the size of this room, and all I have left out of my storeroom is 3 foot lockers. All the documents, all the books that were on Stockwell's list before he ever made the list were in there, and all kinds of other things. They just robbed me of all my personal belongings while they were taking all these. I had about 500 declassified CIA documents relating to POWs, and I had a lot of other things that I had gathered, and they just wiped out my storm. This is the second time this has happened to me, and the lock wasn't broken, not even nicked.
If
And
it
was
gets
a-
too hot for you, wherever you're at, you come, you always have a place with me, and we fight them together, okay?
Blow up your place, the bottom, put it in my car and another time. And, but in that, one of the documents I remember were documents against Richard Childress of the National Security Council, whose name was never even mentioned in the Iran-Contra, and who was up to his eyeballs in it. And this was in a document jointly with Richard Armitage, and it was a document, one document was IRS, the other one was Department of Justice Public Integrity Section Criminal Division, and they were charges of him for using National Security Agency equipment to eavesdrop on citizens involved in political things and things relating to POW issues. And the drug issue was in there, and several other things. It was a few pages long. And I will try to get a copy from another. I gave some to a journalist friend, and I think I can get a copy of my copy to send.
Another interesting.
And Meese dropped that case 2 days before he resigned.
Another interesting point on the drugs transportation on military craft. They were doing a tremendous amount of this during the Iran-Contra episodes out of Mena, Arkansas. They had a regular ongoing situation there with the arms going down and drugs coming back. And one of the fellows involved with that was a guy named William Bodie. And when the heat also got cranked up on that with some of the Christic Institute and a few other active groups and organizations, they shut down that operation in Mena, Arkansas. It was transferred to the Marshall Islands, where it continues now. And lo and behold, William Bodie, who had, matter of fact, he's mentioned in Bo Greggs' book, who had been involved with the Mena, Arkansas creation of that setup there. President Reagan made him, or I'm not sure if it was Reagan at the end or Bush at the beginning of his term, he made William Bodie the ambassador to the Marshall Islands. So that gives him some pretty good control of the situation to continue the drugs.
Have any of you wondered why all of these people who are involved in the drugs and the arms and everything are solidly connected right square together with George Bush and have been for his whole career? The documentation that I saw when I was with Naval Intelligence said that George Bush started the first large-scale drug operations into this country when he was president and CEO of Zapata Oil. And they brought the drugs from Central and South America to the offshore oil platforms and then into the country, bypassing all customs and law enforcement inspections. And George Bush is the man who still runs it, to my knowledge. And he's the president of the United States. I am mystified how the American people could have elected a man to the office of President of the United States when they didn't even know anything about him and they can't find anything written about him anywhere.
And he doesn't deny it either.
That's right, except one book that he wrote.
They didn't even know he was a CIA agent in Vietnam in 1965.
I'm going to read to you from something that I received by courier. This is a envelope that they use to transmit top secret documents. It's sealed with security tape. It was transmitted to me by courier, and what's in here confirms what I already knew and had told everybody quite a long time ago about William Moore, but it confirms the existence of MJ-12 and the Jason Society, a group of scientists who are heavily involved in all of this stuff. I cannot tell you who sent me this because he would not live past an hour from now, I don't think. There always is someone in every meeting that I conduct who runs out and tells the CIA everything I say. And I don't always know who that is. Sometimes I do. I was gently being led into a secret compartmentalized group of scientists and technicians with no official links to any intelligence organization. Soon I was consulting for military organizations, training and equipping field agents, some of which were at least 10 years older than myself. My stubborn reputation for independence and mutual respect paid off. It seems that I had the correct attitude and drive to become involved in the most bizarre group of intelligence officials I have ever met. Until recently, I was completely unaware of the existence of a powerful international control structure in the intelligence community. Two of these officials, whom I have met personally, were interviewing me to become the assistant of a brilliant scientist. Eventually, I met this scientist. He is by far one of the most knowledgeable men on earth. Today, in a 2-hour discussion with him, I had become convinced that I should love to work with him. He gave me homework. I studied. Electrostatic field geometry. I never heard of that before, and I still don't know it. Perturbation theory, field-induced solution phenomena, and a host of very exotic and abstract scientific data. To this date, I still do not completely understand the principles involved. Late in 1984, something happened. A very violent dispute ensued between this scientist and the officials who had interviewed me. They even tried to convince me that my newfound science mentor was manufacturing illicit drugs. This I refused to believe, and I was soon cast out of the group. I did manage to find my scientist friend, and I told him that I would prefer to follow him than to deal with any more intelligence people. By this time, he was evading constant surveillances and received death threats from the officials we had both previously dealt with. As for myself, I was only a pawn in the game. Everyone just disregarded me. My scientist friend, whom I will call Mike, began to act very strangely. He no longer lived at any specific location. He never set a pattern for himself. He never showed up at places that he promised he would be. He never spoke on anything other than outside payphones. He would sleep in cars and vans rather than hotel rooms. Mike was obviously evading the most exotic ambush attempts that any organization could conceive. Every now and then, Mike would call me up and say that he was in the area. Within 2 weeks of these calls, he would suddenly show up. He began to rant and rave about psychic probes and them being able to nail him through patterns. When I asked him what was wrong, he would just shake his head and say, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." This went on for 4 years. Mike contacted me 4 more times during this period. I kept telling him that I would understand if he would just tell me what was wrong. Finally, in 1988, Mike began to open up. He asked me to move to Washington State. I did, and he helped me get settled in. About 3 weeks after I moved up here, he asked me if I had ever bothered to find out about the individuals named on various serialized patent applications. Not patents, but applications. That he had been feeding me over the years. I told him that I was too enthralled with the science itself to be bothered with the individuals responsible for its conceptions. Besides, Tesla was a fairly well-known scientist, and the fact that I was in possession of copies of his original patent notes did not strike me as being strange at all. He asked me if I had researched the patent applications of Thomson Townsend Brown. I responded with ignorance. At this point, he told me to read a book called The Philadelphia Experiment. He then told me to be prepared for the unbelievable. I went to the library the next morning, and there read the book throughout the rest of the day. That night, I got very drunk I finally realized that the scientific principles that I was attempting to understand had to do with the transposition of dimensional barriers in space-time. This is incredible what is contained in here, and I'm only going to read you a very small portion of it because it's very dangerous to walk out of here with too much knowledge of this. I soon became interested in ufology. I started to search for more evidence and public documentation. Bill Moore seemed informed, but I was leery about exposure, so I used a cutout and attempted contact with him. Cutout is an intelligence term for a go-between so that whoever you're contacting does not know who you are. Security was breached as the envelope showed signs of tampering before he even received it. I waited for a few months and my cutout sent me his response. His cattle prod approach to elicit my name and background soured me, and there was something about his style that indicated that he was more interested in smoking me out and smoking out insiders for the intelligence community than to expose the truth. Eventually, I found your original document on the secret government. One day Mike showed up and I told him about it. I must admit I was very skeptical, but after digesting the physics I was researching and its implications, I decided to ask him about it. Have you ever heard the saying, in for a penny, in for a pound? Well, that's what happened. I got the full pound. Mike told me that except for a few details, all of your original documentation was absolutely true. When I asked him how he knew, he told me that up until 1984, he was MJ-11. He told me that he had himself studied under Dr. Mendoza. Furthermore, he explained that the two officials who had originally interviewed me were MJ3 and MJ4, and that they are still in the group.
Yeah, are you going to include this in your book?
I will include parts of it. Just parts of it I can't.
It's my understanding that the companies that are working with this now have the ability to transport material in one direction, let's say from Earth to the Moon. They haven't figured out how to get it back the other direction.
They can transfer whatever they want, wherever they want. According to my information, we have a base on the Moon, we have a colony on Mars. It's a fact, it's not science fiction at all. And this has been going on for many years. Okay, I've had talked for about an hour and 20 minutes, and I think that's about enough for me talking. Let's hear some stuff from you and try to get some interaction and see if you guys can come up with some way that we can deal with this stuff, and that you can, as they said in the other room, put the crown on your head and become the king, and make sure that they can't use this against us whether it's real or not. You see, we don't need to get into a battle of whether aliens exist or they don't exist, or if it's the government, or if it's aliens, or if it's me, or if it's this gentleman, or if it's Maria that's manipulating all this stuff. What we have to realize is that something is going on. People are getting hurt by it. It's being used to manipulate all of us, and any manipulation is bad.
And it's dangerous to ignore it.
That's right. It is extremely dangerous to ignore it, and you must convince your friends and neighbors who say, no, I don't want to talk about UFOs, that that's the wrong attitude to have, because it's not really UFOs we're talking about, it's the Constitution of the United States and our freedoms that we're talking about. That's where all this is leading. Yes, sir?
Did you tell us before I came in about why the Christic Institute is manipulating you? Or
they're not manipulating me.
They don't want you on the same program with them?
Yes, they're afraid that if they appear on the same program with somebody who talks about UFOs, that they will lose their credibility. Now, I can understand that attitude because they're absolutely right with the majority of the people in this country would stop listening to them if they were connected to UFOs. They have a mission to perform, and right now, it's best that they're not, that they can't be attacked in any way.
I might be able to expand a little bit on that. I'm involved in the Christics lawsuit. I'm a witness in the lawsuit. Yeah, they're just into an extremely walking the tightrope situation. Obviously, extremely critical. They have to be very, very, very cautious. Anything that might cast a shadow of any sort, they have to steer around it. And it's very crucial. We all need this case to move forward, the Christic case. Everybody needs it. So let's not anybody get their nose out of joint on
That's
the idea
correct.
that maybe they wanted to step around what we may have in here.
As I said
It's
earlier,
that simple.
I'm for the mission, I'm for the cause, I'm for the preservation of the Constitution of the United States and the preservation of our traditions and our freedoms as a people, as Americans. And that is more important than whether or not I spoke at this convention, and it always will be to me. And if it means that I have to go and live at the North Pole to make sure that that comes about, I will go and live at the North Pole. Nobody will ever see me.
anytime you want to come up there.
Santa Claus now.
Do you feel that Billy Goodman made concessions and is being manipulated now to get back on the air?
Absolutely, and I think he's admitted it on the air, but you can't be too hard on Billy. Billy's trying to make a living, although I disagree. I would not have done it. I would starve first. But I am not Billy Goodman. I'm not walking in his shoes. I do not like what he has done, but I do not condemn him for it either. Yes, he has made concessions. That's the only way he could get back on the air. One of the concessions I'm afraid he made is I'm never going to appear on that station again. I can guarantee it.
Bill, did you appeared on a talk show down in San Diego?
Yes.
And I heard the first time that you were there, and nothing was ever said about it until about 3 or 4 weeks later. I contacted the guy that you was on there was the guy who used to be the mayor, and the guy what the heck was his name? Anyway, he said that the DJ had so much pressure put on him that he had to deny that what you were, well, in fact, what he said was that you were discredited. He had to discredit you because they were putting under pressure. They were
He
putting
would have lost his job.
Yeah.
There is a tremendous campaign to discredit me now. The government has devoted, and I know this for a fact, the government has set aside $1 million to discredit Bill Cooper.
Oh, well.
This is a typical pattern they go through.
It has happened to everyone throughout history who has ever had the strength to stand up and talk about this issue. It will continue to happen. But unlike people in the past, who when the pressure was applied, they faded off into oblivion, Bill Cooper will not, I assure you. I will be here always.
After you spoke at the New Farm Conference last year, I think it was about 9 days later after you stated there was bases on Mars, George Bush on the front cover of all the major newspapers said the next agenda is for us to go to Mars, and I thought that was quite coincidental.
They had to do that to keep people from listening to the fact that I had just revealed that we have a base on the moon and a colony on Mars. To negate what I had said, they had to come out publicly and say, the next planned event in the space program is we're going to establish a base on the moon and a colony on Mars. We already have it. But that announcement was made not because they really want to go establish a base on the moon and a colony on Mars. It was made so that mainstream America won't listen to Bill Cooper.
What are they doing there? On the moon?
Pardon?
Do you know what they're doing on the moon?
I haven't been there. All I know is that the base is there. There's also the remains of ancient civilizations that at least reached the Bronze Age on both the moon and Mars. There are pyramids, there are bases, there are buildings, there are structures, there are tanks, there are ponds on the moon with water. The water was taken there during the 70s.
Vegetation?
There's vegetation, yes.
Is there a kind of a possibility, now just kind of bring a little thing in here, you seen Top Secret what Kennedy was going to do something about because he had something with extraterrestrials. In the beginning it was started out like the extraterrestrials had some good stuff to do, and then it looks like the government said, hey, everybody's seen them, we'll make some sort of a deal with the bad guys and the bad guys, and we'll make this as not only an absolute cover for all these years. Is there anything in that? Could be anything in that what I've kind of brought?
Yeah, but the government didn't make a deal with bad guys. The government made a deal with the group of aliens, according to what I read, if it's real. The government made a deal with this group of aliens to give them technology. They were after technology and they didn't give a damn where they got it. This stuff is like magic. The level of the technology to us is nothing less than sheer magic, and that's what they wanted, and they got it.
They make a deal with anybody then?
Yes.
This was Eisenhower that made the deal?
This was Eisenhower that made the deal, yes.
Is
According
that
to the
because he
documentation that I saw. Now, if this turns out to be a ruse, that means If aliens are not real, it means they've had this technology all along, and when they spring it on us, they're going to say that it was given to us by aliens, because if they don't do that, we're going to be really angry because that technology could have saved a lot of lives for the last 50 years. It's suppressed.
All right, crew, what kind of technology are we talking about? Matter transporters and such?
We're talking about time travel. We're talking about interdimensional movement of material objects. We're talking about space travel with flying disc anti-gravity machines. We're talking the ability to cure cancer, virtually any disease.
Energy?
Free energy we're talking about. We're talking about all of these things. They have flying saucer, anti-gravity type craft that they are flying right now in the desert in Nevada, and occasionally in California near Edwards Air Force Base.
Hey, crew, Mike.
What about the scalar weapons? Is that included?
Scalar weapons are real,
What are that?
but it is not the Soviets using the scalar weapons to engineer our weather or destroy us. The United States and the Soviet Union are one entity, ladies and gentlemen.
I might want to add to that. I used to work
Who was it
at
today?
Lawrence Livermore Labs. I'm an engineer by training. And I went to a meeting in '83 right after Reagan had announced Star Wars or sprung it on the public, whereas the weapons community has known about that technology, as you know, for well over 10 years. And I went to a meeting that was
Can you talk a little louder so the microphone
Yes.
can pick you?
There was a very reputable scientist, not of the Teller stature, but very well up in the weapons community, that gave a speech on Star Wars. And after it was over, there was an individual there that I'd known from other activities that said he was more into the weapons design than I was. As a matter of fact, I wasn't into weapons design at all, but he made the point that we've all heard the concept of balance of power, right? When you want to maintain the balance of power, because in military theory, that if one side is stronger than the other, they're going to jump on the weaker one. So one of the concepts that had come up to maintain this balance of power between the Soviets and the Americans was joint weapons design.
Right. Whatever we have, they have. Whatever they have, we have. It's been the case for many years. The United States financed and brought the Soviet Union to being, in fact, and has financed it ever since its inception, is still, in fact, the Rockefellers own the Bank of Russia. It's in the Kremlin. It's the Rockefeller Bank.
That was never, that was that way all the way through.
It's always been that way. It is the manipulation of the world power structure, which some people call the Illuminati, some call it the Order, some call it the secret government, doesn't matter what you call it. They are men who have no patriotism, no loyalty to any one country. They manipulate populations, they manipulate social structures, they do social engineering, they manipulate and guide us around like somebody playing chess on a very big board, and they are playing a game at a level that we can't even comprehend, and they are in absolute power, and they are all one and the same.
And it's too late for us to do anything about it, really.
No, no. If it was, I wouldn't be up here.
We might as well go home.
That's why we're here.
Back on the, can you tell me what NJ 11, 12, 3, and 4 are, and where I might learn more about them? I've heard it, I'm somewhere in my memory, but I'm not.
Read Whitley Strieber's book, Majestic. The total structure of MJ-12 is outlined in that book.
It's called Majestic?
It's called Majestic. The book is called Majestic. The real name of the organization is Majesty 12, sometimes called Majority 12. The operation that it controls is Operation Majority.
And the author?
The only, Whitley Strieber. The only thing you'll find in that book that is not real is the project names have been changed. Some of the names of people have been changed. And what he describes as going on in the craft, he has no way of really knowing. That is fiction. The rest of the book is true. The book is published under fiction. You will be told that it is fiction. It is not. The documents that you see in that book are real documents. I saw every one of them over 17 years ago. They're real.
What are scalar weapons?
Top secret.
Scalar weapons are weapons that were developed from a type of radar microwave energy that if you have two transmitters sending out different frequencies and you cross these frequencies, you can actually cause effects to happen where these beams cross. One of these things is called a cold bomb. They can literally suck all the energy completely out of an area. They can manipulate weather patterns, create weather.
High pressure, low pressure. Tesla coil.
Yes, it's based upon that. Hello, Barbara, come in, please.
Okay.
This is my good friend Barbara Honegger.
Well, I'm an acquaintance with Sam.
This is right after the
UFO meeting, Mr. Fisher.
Is this the wrong meeting room?
Let's have a hand, let's have a round of applause.
We'll be glad to have you, though. Stay longer, Nick.
Consider us a couple of UFOs.
Scalar weapons.
So you're gonna take off.
Yes.
Yeah, we know what we're
We need to
doing.
remember, like, there could be UFOs, hundreds of them going through the sky at all times over any one city, and just because we can't see them, our eyes operate on visible light, and God knows what kind of spectrum they have.
That's true, we don't know. But I wouldn't say there's hundreds going over all the time.
Well, a couple.
But there are always, if you're vigilant and you go out every night, you're going to see something sooner or later. It's not going to take a whole hell of a long time to see it.
What about the UFO
Yeah.
ship that they've got in a hangar that's supposed to be invisible? Is
I
there
don't
any
know
truth to that?
I don't know anything about an invisible hangar. I know that the facilities that they store these things in are usually underground.
Somebody told me that they had one up at, well, this is a friend of mine, told me that they had one up at Edwards Air Force Base in a hangar. It was invisible. You could look through in a window. If you get past the guard, you could look at through this one window, through the building and out the window on the other side. But if you tried to walk through the building, you couldn't get through.
Well, I know that there has been and may still be craft stored in the hangar at Edwards. Not too long ago, there were 3 craft in the hangar at Norton Air Force Base, and some people were actually taken there and were shown this thing. One of them was Senator Alan Cranston from California. And just yesterday, I saw color drawings by a person at Norton who saw these craft, and I may be getting a copy of this drawing. It's incredible. It's really a super drawing. One of the people who actually saw the craft made this drawing, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to get it or not because he's afraid that that they'll know who drew it. So we'll see.
There's some great photography in the Gulf Breeze Briefing, which is the new book that's out.
It's what? In what?
In the Gulf, the Gulf Breeze.
Gulf Breeze sightings? Yeah.
Walter.
Are you familiar with a book? I have a copy of it called The Cosmic Conspiracy by a man named Stan Deyo.
Yes, he has a new book out called The Vindicator Scrolls, which you should read also. It outlines the technology that was developed by T. Townsend Brown. It shows the craft that he built that flew using what's called a plasma drive. It shows pictures of several different flying saucers that were actually built and flew back in the 50s. The man's name is Stan Deyo. He lives in Australia. The book is called The Vindicator Scrolls. The previous book that he wrote was The Cosmic Conspiracy. You should read that also.
Very hard to find.
It is very hard to find, but it's worth finding, believe me. It's really worth finding. In fact, it's so worth finding, I think I will call him and ask if we can handle it here, because people need to be able to get it.
I've been able to find it.
Well, I've got his phone number. He's the author, so we can get him directly from him.
Are all these books you're mentioning in these book lists you have in here?
No, on the computer, oh, wait a minute, the book list, I don't think the Vindicator Scrolls is on that list, and the Cosmic Conspiracy may not be, so you might want to add them, but in that bibliography, there's over 300, probably around 400 books that all have to do with the UFO situation. I recommend that you read as many as you can. I have almost every one of them, yes.
I have a real curiosity about Whitley's Favor, since I grabbed the first copy of King that came out. Was waiting to write and didn't do so. Something led me to just wait. Red Transformation, underlining that as though it were not, taking data. Shaver was said, so number one book, we have a man terribly afraid, an author who is on Johnny Carson, shaking in his boots, frightened to death by what would frighten any of us to see it true. Secondly, in the second book, all through the book, if you go through it and do it, underline it, you will find that he describes these characters as malevolent, pretty lousy, scary, but he has to summarize it somehow for himself, maybe for his own sanity, or is he playing a game, I don't know. He summarizes it with, aren't they really great to try to basically make us face our rotten fears and go to hell and back because we'll come out better for all of this.
He's doing what all, or I shouldn't say all, because some of them are telling the truth, but most of the abductees, and I believe this is some kind of mind control that's implanted in them, they describe the most terrible, terrifying things that happened to them, and then they say it was such a wonderful experience and aren't the visitors good, and I can't wait till they come back and see me again.
Yes.
That is a lie. It is a lie that they have been somehow programmed to say, because that is not what they really feel, and that is not what they really
Right,
experience.
you speak of repulsion and stuff that I feel is wrong. Thirdly, you just mentioned the third book I haven't read yet, Majestic. Are you saying that in Majestic he claims now they, the aliens, giving him the knowledge, or...
No, he claims Majestic is a fiction book based upon the Roswell incident. I'm telling you that there's nothing fiction about it. It is non-fiction. It is exactly what I read years ago, and most of it comes right out of the diaries of James Forrestal, who was an abductee, and in the book is represented by the character Wilfred Stone.
Where is Whitley getting this? Is anybody behind
In the front of the book.
Is Whitley one of us? Is he for real? Or
No,
is he,
he's not one of us. I can guarantee you that.
I mean, this
In the
is
front of the
stuff-
book, he gives credit to Stanton Friedman, William Moore, and Jamie Chandray, who I named 3 years ago as being government agents, and William Moore admitted that he was a government agent on July the 1st, 1989, in front of 500 people right here in Las Vegas. Yes.
Can you get into the mind control experiments that were DoD and CIA contracts to UCLA with Dr. Jolywitz?
I could, but I won't, but I will say this. Recently, I was viciously attacked by UFO Magazine. How many of you read that article? I hope all of you read it. If you haven't, read it. Don't buy the magazine. Don't put money in their pockets, but borrow a copy from someone who has it and read it. And I'm going to tell you why you should read it, because my research has shown this, and has been verified by the research of Martin Cannon, who recently published a piece in, what's the name of that magazine? Omni. Martin Cannon is a good researcher. He used to also be a very close friend of Vicki Cooper's, and he used to be an author who worked on the staff of UFO Magazine. Vicki Cooper's uncle is Grant Cooper. Anybody here know who Grant Cooper is?
No, I know.
Grant Cooper is the defense attorney for Sirhan Sirhan. He is also the defense attorney for the Johnny Rosselli mob, who's been heavily implicated in arms deals, drug deals, and assassination attempts working for the CIA. Sirhan Sirhan was not defended. He was not defended because the government wanted to make sure that it was another lone gunman, no conspiracy. You see, Robert Kennedy was really shot behind the right ear at close range, and there was only one person standing there, and that was the security person.
Security guard.
There was over 9 shots fired in that room, but Sirhan Sirhan only had 8 in his gun, and none of the security people admitted to firing one of their weapons. So we know that Grant Cooper is CIA, and that's Vicki Cooper's uncle. She is the editor and publisher of UFO Magazine. Okay, she has also told her friends all over Los Angeles that UFO Magazine, and we have the statements from several people that she told them that UFO Magazine is controlled by the CIA. Vicki Cooper used to live in Washington, D.C. Okay? I can go on and on and on and on and on, but it's not necessary. Yes?
Since you couldn't get into the mind control experiments, what about, can you get into the intelligence hospitals like the one we have at Fort Bragg? And the one we
I
have
want
in
to go
Vietnam?
a little bit further. There's a man on the staff of UFO Magazine, or used to be on the staff until recently, called Barry Tapp. You heard her mention Jolyon West, Dr. Lilly. These are people who invented mind control
And he didn't die.
for the CIA. Okay? Barry Tapp used to work for both of those gentlemen. in mind control experiments. Barry Taff is the one who found Vicki Cooper, the editor and publisher of UFO magazine, found her an apartment when she came to Los Angeles, and guess who lives in the apartment directly above her?
Very sad.
Barry Taff, a mind control expert. Now, quit believing what you read just because it's published somewhere. Quit believing what you see on TV. Don't believe what I tell you. Don't believe what anybody tells you. You have to learn to discern the truth and stop stumbling around in the dark, running into doors all the time. Nothing is as it seems. Yes.
Like we have the John Kennedy film that you're in possession of.
Mhm.
Is there a Bobby Kennedy revealing film?
No, there's not at this present time, but there is enough evidence to show that there was a cover-up, that Sirhan was not properly defended, and that everything that they said happened when Robert Kennedy was killed didn't, and they are trying to reopen the case in Los Angeles, and there's so much evidence for it that it just might happen.
There was so much profuse cover-up with the Robert Kennedy kitchen assassination that relative to the excess numbers of shots that could not have come from one gun, they actually removed entire parts of the wall and the door jambs and the door in the kitchen, which contained a whole handful of bullets, and then there was a handful of, I say handful, I don't have the specific numbers, but there was bullets in the door jamb. They actually came in and removed the entire door. So that was totally
And that evidence has disappeared from the
that-
property room in the LA
As a
Police
matter of fact,
Department
it was
mysteriously.
burned.
There's a book called Contract on America. A lot of people in here probably read that book, Contract on America, that talks about the Robert Kennedy assassination and ties it in with other ones.
His bodyguard was Rosie Greer, so Rosie Greer would know the whole deal, right? He was there.
Not necessarily, but there was a couple people there. There was a couple of guns.
I don't know, there's a lot of people
connected.
around.
He had powder burns on the back of his head, and Sirhan was no closer than 3 or 4 feet.
His
The
gun was-
hospital had powder burns, and the gun pretty much point blank.
And Sirhan was in front of him.
Yeah, Sirhan was always in front of Robert
And
Kennedy.
there was a couple other people shot, see? So they
Yeah.
had certain numbers of shots that went into a few other bystanders, and then the rest of them into the wall. When you get done counting them, it just doesn't add up. Can't say.
Okay, folks, now, let me sort of clarify something for you right here. This thing happens to me all the time. Barbara and Art Gallagher and I are friends, and Keith and Gordy can attest to that fact. She's at dinner at my home, we talk on the phone. But again, she's connected with the Christic Institute. She is trying to prosecute her own case in October Surprise. I want you to respect her. I get upset sometimes when people compromise their morals, so to speak, and I think it's a moral compromise to make a statement like what she did. But anyway, I want you to respect it. Anyway, I want you to respect the Christic Institute for what they're doing. I'm a big boy, and these things can roll right off my back, okay? It's important that you know these things. And I'm trying to bring this to a close in the best way that I can. All of the information that I've told you here, and much, much more, that I don't even have time to tell anybody, is going to be in my book. There's only going to be 3,000 copies of my book printed. It was difficult to find a publisher who would even consider printing anything that I wrote, because I name names, I don't pull any punches, I don't compromise any of my morals or anything, and I am running up the hill with my sword out, and I don't have an organization, and I don't have to be political. Over half of the copies have already been sold. They won't be printed until September. There will be 500 hardcover, limited numbered and signed first editions. There will be 2,500 what they call quality paperback, real nice books. But the order forms are up here. I would suggest that if you want one, you'd better order them now, because they are going to disappear before they're even printed. You will not find them on bookshelf in any bookstore, except with the ramp, the people up in Yelm have ordered, I think, 350 copies.
All right.
So that's the only bookstore in the United States that's going to have those copies. It's limited because the publisher is scared and the publisher doesn't believe that they'll even sell. And the publisher is really surprised because they're not only selling, but they will be sold out before they're printed. But whether or not she will publish another edition, I don't know. And I can't tell you who the publisher is at this time.
Yeah, she might not have the opportunity to do that, so why not go out with the initial printing at the book 3,000?
This is the number that she arrived at, and that's, I had to
Even
agree
if
to
they're all
that.
pre-sold before she actually prints?
This is what the contract says.
Ever
I'm not,
dealt with a publisher?
I'm not going to rattle her chain, if you know what I mean.
Is that the only publisher you could find?
That's the only publisher in the United States I could find that would even consider publishing my book.
Bill, would you talk about a book, and I forget the author, it escapes me right now, called Zone of Silence?
Got it right there.
I wasn't in the meeting yesterday, I had other things to do. There it is. And who wrote that?
Zone of Silence by Gary Hunt. This is the only copy I've ever seen ever. It doesn't mean that it's rare. I don't know if they pulled this book, but this is just the only copy I've ever seen. In here is the description of an errant missile that was fired from a base up in Utah, supposedly carrying radioactive material, which crashed in Mexico. It's all a lie. It was not a missile carrying nuclear material that crashed in Mexico. It was a UFO that crashed in Mexico, and it describes the entire recovery operation, including building a railroad spur all the way into Mexico, into what they call the Zone of Silence, and they not only removed the wreckage of the UFO, but they removed over 100,000 barrels of dirt at the site. And then when they left, they pulled up all the tracks behind them.
What's the author's name?
The author's name is Gary Hunt.
Is that the one they talk about in Crash at Aztec?
No, I don't think so.
What's the one that has the next?
What's the name of your new book?
The name of my book is Behold a Pale Horse.
Behold what?
A pale horse. Behold a pale horse.
You say don't believe what we hear, that's the philosophy I live by. All these things, I'd love to get one little nugget of hard truth on anything.
God, I just gave you a whole bunch today. I gave you the number of the bill that funded AIDS. I gave you the project that it was made under.
Let me have one.
I showed you the study that you can go and get yourself. All this is proof.
I guess I'm fascinated by the bases on the moon and Mars.
Read a book called We Discovered Alien Bases on the Moon by Fred Steckling. There's a whole bunch of other books. Most of them are on my list. They have hard proof. They have photographs, NASA photographs. Yes. I'm sorry, I can't.
Evidence you believe from these entities who are giving information to mediums like Bashar or Charlie?
I would be very cautious because they all contradict each other. And if what they say is really coming from some higher plane, that would not occur. So somebody's lying somewhere along the line, I just don't know who it is.
So what does all this mean, Bill? Tie it up. What can we do? What does all this mean?
What it means is I think we're on the threshold of being able, for the first time in our history, to gather vast sums of information and decide our own fate. I think we are at a turning point in history where people are beginning to wake up and information is being made available at an astronomical rate. People are also discerning the truth, where they never knew that they were being manipulated for the last 50 years. Now they are beginning to discover what is really going on under the surface. They are beginning to discern the lies. They are beginning to discern what the truth is. They are beginning to discern that reality as they knew it is not reality as it really exists. And we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to discard all the junk of the past and all the manipulation of the past and start on a new road of real freedom and real truth and real peace and comfort and tranquility in our lives. But to do that, to accomplish it, we're all going to have to be active and sacrifice and make it come true, and it's not going to be real easy. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be like fighting in a war, and it really is a war. For those of you who do not understand it, the elite of the world, the power structure and the big money, has declared war on us. That is the essence of it. And when they declared war on us, we must pick up our weapons, whatever they may be, and fight them back and win and be victorious. And I don't mean pick up a gun and go shoot your congressman. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about legal, nonviolent, all of us active, all of us throwing off the bullshit, getting at the truth, and changing our world for the better. And we can do it. I want you to pick up your crown, put it on your head, and walk out of here with a regal bearing like you deserve, and go out and do whatever you are capable of doing to help us bring this about.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
In terms of also, for all of us to learn to be sovereign in terms of, so that we're not dependent on the government when things come down. I mean,
We are sovereign, we just don't know it. Most of us don't know it. You have to, one of the quickest ways to truly become free is to surround yourself with everything you need in life so that you are not dependent upon the power structure. Because when you do that, they have no power over you. Okay?
For those of us who like to fight by means of talking on hotline radio shows, but don't want to be or whatever graft it is, voice printed, a blob of peanut butter on the roof of the mouthpiece is the shape of the oral cavity, changes your voice range. If you want to speak out on the radio but not be documented as such, works.
I got to say something about that. I think it's time to stop hiding. I think secrecy has to come down. That's what got us into this. We would only be perpetrating what got us into this. We all have to stand up and say, my name is Bill Cooper and I'm angry. I don't want this to happen anymore, and I don't care if you know who I am or not. I'm not going to hide from you. And if you don't change it, I'm going to vote you out of office. We all have to do that. Quit hiding. Come out of the closet. Put the crown on your head. Stand up and be the king, like you learned in the other room. Yes?
Did you mention your bulletin board so people can get more information?
I have a computer bulletin board service. I'm hooked up with the Center for Action. You can become hooked up with me or with the Center for Action or both. The bulletin board number is 602-567-6725. Peter, is there any way to get a meeting?
Do you take the cash?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have material up here available. Got any of Bill's stuff?
We need the money.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
We didn't bring our
I trust you. 32? You have change?
He was my partner, I was thinking, I know, but...
I just got 40.